Teaser trailer. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Eugene's July 18th, 2025 program, Deportation, Due Process, and the Threat to Democracy. My name is Thomas Hiura. I serve as president of City Club, and I'm pleased to welcome you to another of the many forums we've held since 1990 in the name of our mission to build community vision through open inquiry. City Club is lucky to be a trusted, open, and independent voice for Eugene area community members to be heard. And as a lifelong Eugenian, I dare say the community is lucky to have the City Club and to hear from our program guests and questions from the audience, whether here in the beautiful Wow Hall, online, or over the radio. We believe these kinds of gatherings around critical community topics strengthen our understanding of one another and ultimately our ability to support the community building work in so many sectors of Eugene. In today's fractured information landscape, we want to be a space where you can participate in unearthing, disseminating, and sharing relevant information in conversation together. And I think we're all doing that quite well today already. We would love for you to browse our past programs at cityclubofeugene.org or our YouTube or Facebook. Do consider becoming a member if you'd like to support our work as the only city club in Oregon that meets weekly. I did so in 2019, so now my name tag acknowledges my start date, which makes it look even more of a dignified fashion statement than it already does. There are many ways to support and collaborate with us, and I'd like to thank our Platinum and Diamond community sponsors. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. Thank you to the City of Eugene and Lane County for their generous support as well. And a special acknowledgement of our most recent Sapphire sponsor, Summit Bank. We're proud to do our banking at Summit, and we're grateful to the contributions of Summit's employees to our club and community. A quick reminder to silence all cell phones here in the Wow Hall. And with that, I'll turn the mic over to the coordinator of today's program, my colleague on the board of directors, Betsy Pownall.
Thank you, Thomas, and good afternoon. My name is Betsy Pownall, member of the City Club Program Committee and of the board. The emergency is here. The crisis is now. New York Times columnist Ezra Klein wrote this in April, and it is now July, and the crisis is getting worse. People are disappearing as they get deported to prisons within and outside our country without due process. Unmarked cars, masked ICE agents, arrests without cause. This describes a police state, and that is where we are in America today. Because this is unfamiliar for those of us born after World War II, it feels surreal. There's a human survival tendency to look away, to think this can't be happening. However, in America, today it is. And things are happening very quickly. When the panelists convened in March to discuss this program, the nation's focus was on Alien Enemies Act and birthright citizenship. Now, just 4 months later, due process is the focus, along with the deportation of American citizens. This is not a political issue. This is an issue of morality and human rights. We must not look away. How did we get here, and where exactly are we? Our panelists will discuss the cultural heritage of colonization and deportation that underlies American history, the Alien Enemies Act, Chinese Exclusion Act, and its historical echo, what is being seen in the Office of Immigration Lawyers, and what a refugee is experiencing today. Deportation, due process, and the threat to democracy includes panelists Tobin Hansen, PhD of UO Honors College, Assistant Teaching Professor, Benjamin Wong, JD, immigration lawyer and adjunct law professor at the U of O Law School, Katrina Kilgren, JD, U.S. immigration lawyer and UO pro tem instructor, and Christine Zeller-Powell, JD, Director of the Refugee and Immigrant Services of the program Catholic Community Services of Lane County. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Tobin.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Betsy Thomas and to the City Club of Eugene. The U.S. federal government operates powerful deportation machinery. It runs roughly and unevenly but keeps churning. The mechanisms of deportation are centralized and bureaucratized yet far-reaching. They operate across federal departments and agencies and in cooperation with state and local governments. For decades, it's been capable of more than 1 million expulsions from U.S. territory annually, often having devastating effects on people's lives. I'm a cultural anthropologist who's been studying deportation since 2013. In the next 8 minutes, I'll put the government's expulsionary apparatus in context by outlining 3 aspects. First, antecedents to today's deportation regime. Second, historical figures. And third, social consequences. I'll end by suggesting that attempts to manage human migration should balance the social and economic equities of U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens. There are several historical precursors to modern deportation. I call these forms of proto-deportation. They suggest how federalized and centralized deportation apparatus could emerge at the end of the 19th century. So I'll mention 3 proto-deportation antecedents: English colonial practices, indigenous removal, and fugitive slave laws. The English colonial practice known as warning out barred people deemed undesirable from colonial townships, expelled not from U.S. territory, but from a local parish, a local community. Those warned out comprised, quote, transients, vagabonds, drunkards, idiots, strolling poor people, end quote. Other people were facially ineligible for right to presence, for denizen status, much less citizenship status. These were, in the historical language of the time, quote, Indians, mulattoes, Negroes, end quote, and they were other non-English and non-Euro descendant peoples. Indigenous removal is another form of proto-deportation, and over millennia, here in North America, indigenous groups have developed logics of place, of community, of belonging, of nation. Since the 16th century, European contact reorganized dominant understandings of belonging, leading to non-recognition of indigenous peoples, the indigenous right to presence, and conflating the idea of land and land ownership and occupation and property with whiteness. 1830, Andrew Jackson Indian Removal Act. A local example, 1851, the Willamette Treaty Commission signed an agreement promising the Santiam peoples, where I'm from, land between the North and the South Santiam rivers. By 1855, they had already reneged, and Santiam peoples were forced onto the Grand Ronde, a smaller piece of land to the west. Lastly, the economic and social institutions of plantation-based chattel slavery reflected patterns of coercive confinement and removal. Confinement definitionally, removal as evident in, for example, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, the first federalized Fugitive Slave Act, and the much more intense and large-scale Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. So each example of proto-deportation reflects how exclusion or expulsion of stigmatized people comes to be naturalized as a form of governance of people deemed undesirable. The contemporary deportation regime emerged in the latter 19th century, subsequent to and coincident with industrialization and advancing transportation technologies. In North America, capital interests required a pliable workforce for mining, railroad construction, large-scale mechanized agriculture, and other aspects of an industrializing economy. So the U.S. government facilitated the arrival of Chinese people, of Mexicanos, before then implementing Chinese exclusion that Benjamin Wang is going to talk about, and then Asian exclusion and exclusions more broadly. So simultaneously, discourses that frame people, Chinese people, Mexicanos, other non-white people, as perpetual outsiders reinforces this notion of the removability or outsiderness of some people. And that's the context within which the deportation statutory framework, the judicial precedents, and the executive enforcement practices have emerged. So crafting the deportation machinery of the 20th and 21st centuries has coincided with a time in world history of population growth, increased human migrations and displacement around the world by economic inequality, political strife, social instability, and climate change. Second point, the dimensions of the deportation apparatus are reflected in statistics that have been kept since 1892. So since that year, the US government has documented more than 60 million expulsions. Until the 1920s, deportation from the US numbered fewer than 30,000 a year. In the 40s and 50s, with increased funding and capacity, deportation climbed into the hundreds of thousands annually. This coincided with the Bracero program, agreement between the US and Mexican federal governments to facilitate migration from Mexico. Expulsions reached 1 million a year in 1985. Immigration laws promulgated in 1996 updated the Immigration Nationality Act. They had a big effect. Katrina Kilgren or others of us can talk about that. There was an ensuing shift from administrative return to formal deportation with consequences and a limiting effect on subsequent return from folks. Third, deportation compounds social and economic hardship. And two ongoing research projects of mine in northern Mexico suggest that deported people face separation from family, cultural disorientation in unfamiliar receiving communities, extortion by organized crime and police, difficulty accessing employment, education, and healthcare. Deportation is a singular disruption in people's lives, and although people may show tremendous resilience to cope, for some the effects of deportation are crushing. And people are subjected to deportation despite negative macroeconomic effects for the US. Immigrants are young people invested in by governments and societies around the world. In the US, immigrants are dynamic community members who, in prime working age have higher labor force participation than the native born. I'll conclude with my perspective, which is informed by my work as an anthropologist. Access to movement and presence is fundamental to human well-being. Making life with others, making home, living in community, self-determining one's existence, enable thriving. The chance to live in community, the chance to do right by our families, an ethic of shared human personhood, and a politics of flourishing should encourage rethinking of shared humanity across national, cultural, racial, and socioeconomic differences. Clear, coherent, thoughtful immigration policy should be driven by recognition of collective human identity. That's the us and the we, that we imagine ourselves to be and that we are. This extends across borders that can be managed safely and humanely and in an orderly way with care, with understanding that movement is characteristic of the human condition. Migration is human. Thank you very much. Next is immigration attorney Benjamin Wang.
Well, thank you all for coming here today and to engage this conversation about deportation and immigration. I'm Benjamin Wang, and I've been a local immigration attorney for 20-some years, since 1998. And I also teach immigration law class as a law school. And ever since the last election in November, there have been a lot of notable changes in my daily consultations. Right after the election, I got phone calls from people. They wanted to find out if they have a way to move to Canada. So you can sort of imagine who would be calling me to say, hey, I want to move to Canada. There's a way I can do that. And then I've had quite a lot of consultations with long-term lawful permanent residents. Long-term, I mean they've been here for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And they're concerned about their status. They're concerned about if they leave the United States, can they come back? Can they come home? So they're very concerned. Now, recently, I've had conversations with naturalized citizens. Naturalized citizens, you probably hear in the news recently, the government's talking about denaturalization. And denaturalization is a process to take away people's citizenship. So people even who are citizens today, they are concerned. They're afraid that they may be arrested. They're afraid that they may be detained. They're afraid that if they take a short trip outside the United States, they may not be allowed to come in. They want to know what documents they need to bring when they travel. They want to know if they get detained, what can they do? So all this that has been going on, it certainly makes the United States like we're in a war, but we're not in a war. The president certainly has invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, listen to this, 1798, to detain and deport Venezuelans who have been in the United States over 14 years old. The executive order invoking that act states that these Venezuelans who have been here, they belong to a gang, criminal gang. They work with the government of Venezuela to invade us. So they want to, the president wants to exercise this extraordinary power to detain these gang members and send them out. And they send them out to El Salvador. Now, the question then becomes, you have to determine whether or not an individual is a gang member, even assume that that law applies to the gang, there's the invasion of that. But how to make that determination? Basically based on the tattoos. You have a tattoo, you're a gang member. Who makes that determination? The ICE agent, officer of the ICE. They make that determination. When they say you're a gang member, you get sent out. So we see these extreme enforcement actions recently. People get arrested, detained, sent out. So there's this great fear in the immigrant community, that fear, you know, the husband, wife goes to work in the morning, they may not be able to come home. Families may be separated, and young children may not be taken care of. All those fears are based on these just extreme enforcement actions taken by the government. And we also notice that due process is not followed. For example, who is a gang member? There is no process to make that determination. The gang having tattoo, we know having tattoo doesn't mean that person belongs to a gang. The tattoo can be religious symbol. It can be just some symbol of some significance in the family or in the person's life. But doesn't matter. If you have a tattoo, you're a gang, you get sent out. Court orders have not been followed. The government is not following the court orders. The court said, hey, you need to facilitate that person to come back to the United States because you have admitted that you made a mistake to send him out in the first place. In other words, he should not have been sent out. You send him out, now get him back. So eventually the person did get back. We probably read in the news. So all these extreme actions, enforcement actions, they're somewhat identical to another era in the United States history. That's what I call the sort of the dark ages for immigration, the Chinese exclusion era of the 1880s. We know that when the Chinese came, first they came under the treaty, the Burlingame Treaty of 1868. Why did they come? Because the United States needed cheap labor. They wanted people to come here to work. The beginning was a gold mine, California, the gold mine. And then once the gold mine, the work was done, they began working on the Continental Railroad. So they helped build the railroad. The work was all done. The economy was getting bad in California. So 1873, that's when the California was suffering economic downturn. And who did they blame? The Chinese. They said the Chinese took over their jobs. Chinese working for low-wage jobs. They didn't mind living under conditions the white people will never live under. So that was also a claim was made the Chinese were invading the West Coast and were going to take over the West Coast if they were not stopped. So Congress passed a series of laws restricting Chinese immigration and excluding Chinese from immigrating to the United States. And the case, there was a case that went to the Supreme Court. And the court actually announced the plenary power doctrine, which set up the immigration framework. Basic plenary power doctrine says that the political branches of the government have the plenary power to regulate immigration, especially entries of foreign nationals, and the courts would not review those actions. So it's really sad now to see the repeat in history. You see, even though it's a time, it's over 100-some years, but the anti-immigrant sentiment is very familiar. The invasion, taking over jobs. But immigration is one of the great pillars of this society, of the United States, if you really think about it, as a nation of immigrants. Why do we attract people to come here? They don't just come here with cheap labor. They come here, they're scientists, they're researchers. They come here, they work hard, and also enrich our society. And thank you. And the next will be local attorney Katrina will be speaking to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Katrina Kilgren. I am a local immigration law attorney in private practice. And I too have been seeing many of the same types of individuals coming into my office that Attorney Benjamin Wang spoke of. Esteemed, very talented professors at our local schools, concerned now that their work is too edgy for our current administration, that their classes are now putting them at risk. Citizens who have been, or not citizens, but long-term residents, long-term community members who are concerned about themselves, concerned about their family members. I'm seeing them inside my office, but what is perhaps most concerning to me right now are the things that are not happening in my office because they are happening out of sight by virtue of the ways, the tactics that the federal government is using in its campaign of mass deportation. The people who are being encountered by masked ICE officers during what they thought was a routine appointment. And I wanna, as somebody who is seeing these things with my own eyes, sometimes hearing these things on the news, we think, that's a Los Angeles issue. Like that's happening elsewhere. But one thing that I want to share with you is that those things are actually happening here in Eugene. And one thing that's important to me is to quell the idea that these are rumors or that this is posturing. The truth is that our community is being used as a site for this type of immigration enforcement. We in Eugene have a local field office of ICE, of Immigration Customs Enforcement, specifically with their Office of Enforcement and Removal. They're tasked with investigating people who might be in violation of the immigration laws and effectuating their detention and potential deportation. So there is a site of this office in our community. And so this isn't something that's happening far away in Washington, D.C., or in Los Angeles, or even in Portland, where we have other structures of our immigration system. It's happening in our community. And it's not happening to criminals. It's not happening to people who are abusing our system. It is happening to people who are following the laws to the T. Our federal laws include the incorporation of protections for refugees. The UN Convention on Refugees is incorporated into our law. 1980 Refugee Act put standard procedures in place for allowing people to avail themselves of protection from persecution, either at our border or already within our country. And although deportations have always existed, immigration enforcement has always existed, at times, indiscriminately against certain racial categories of people. But okay, so deportations now are not a new issue. However, the targeted removal and the jailing of asylum seekers who are trying to avail themselves of the laws that were put into place as a legacy of World War II is something that is very concerning to me and is a degree of cruelty and inhumanity in our immigration system currently that is unprecedented, at least in my 15 years as an immigration law attorney. So imagine that you have been living outside of the United States, that you were born outside of the United States, and due to climate pressure, due to the infiltration of cartels in your area, of their huge international, commercial endeavors to feed the drug needs of American citizens, are seeing an increase in violence in their community. People are going missing, people are being kidnapped, people are being killed. The threat has become very real to your family. You have received death threats against your family members, and the government is at a loss to be able to control this level of violence in your community. This is a reality that's happening in many of the countries that are our immediate southern neighbors, our neighbors in the Americas. What is to be done? There's an idea, right, perpetuated through the American dream of protections in the United States. And some of the strongest, most tenacious, most morally driven people I have ever met in my life have then come to me and asked me for help in availing them of the United States laws that exist to help people in this situation. Those people have to do so many things. Not only the journey, imagine leaving everything behind to try to start a new life for the welfare of your family. The US system does not make it easy. You have to fill out applications in English, you have to do them on time, you have to show up at a big, intimidating courthouse in a skyscraper in Portland. You need to advocate under very rigid rules on your own behalf because an attorney is not assigned to you, and it's very challenging to find an immigration attorney. And sometimes, in addition to doing all those things with the court, you filled out your application. One other thing that you need to do as a condition of participating in your lawful process to avail yourself of your right of protection is to routinely check in with ICE. They're kind of like your probation officers to make sure that you are still here, you haven't absconded and gone somewhere, that you are still motivated and following your lawful process. And let's say you've already done this a handful of times. It's kind of a drag. You have to miss a day of work and you have to go to this federal building in Eugene to check in. But you understand that you have responsibilities, it's a privilege to seek protection, and you are very, very motivated to become a member of the US community with all the privileges and rights that it holds. And then imagine going and, for who knows why, because you've done this before, you're told that you're being taken into custody and that within an hour you're going to be transported to Tacoma, Washington, to a privately run correctional facility. Where there you'll have limited access to phone calls. You will get one phone call upon arrival, and then after which you'll be allowed phone privileges if you have money on a phone card for 3 minutes to talk to your loved ones while you are in jail for seeking asylum in the United States. And there, if you didn't have an attorney already, how are you going to find one? You do not have phone calls to be calling law offices to try to get an attorney. So in my remaining time, I want to tell you how to please help our community members gain access to attorneys. Because in the process, in the immigration process in the United States, having an attorney can make all the difference. Having an attorney who knows how to navigate this complicated system, to do things at the right time, has an approval rating difference for people in seeking asylum that's monumental, especially for folks who are detained. Approval rates of asylum rates for people who are detained are abysmal. So, in Oregon, we believe in welcoming community members. We have always been a place that believes in welcoming community members, in accepting newcomers, in opening our doors and taking care of each other. And the Oregon State Legislature approved funding for universal representation, which is now being carried out through a program called Equity Corps of Oregon. It's the clearinghouse for funds. So nobody in Oregon should be facing precarity in this current time without access to a lawyer. Spread the word that ECHO exists, ECO, Equity Corps of Oregon, where people can get access to legal advice to determine whether their next ICE appointment is risky, even though it wasn't the last time that they went in March, to see if it is risky for them now and what personal safety steps they can take to prepare for their next immigration court hearing in Portland, where they may have done that before, but now people are getting arrested outside or inside the Portland Immigration Court. Things that weren't risky mere months ago are changing in this current landscape. And that is causing fear, that is causing concern. But please, as community members, the next time the funding is up for review with the state legislature, please put your full support behind this, because this is how people in Oregon are going to have access to the limited amount of due process that is currently being allowed to them. This is the way that we can help people on the ground, and that we can also stand up for due process in giving people access, the most vulnerable among us, at times, also the most strongest in so many ways. But they deserve to have a chance to their lawful process in the United States, even under a government that is trying to deport them. Next up, it is my pleasure to introduce Christine Zeller-Powell. She is an amazing asset for our community. She is the leader and innovator of the Refugee Resettlement and Immigration Services. It's such a long name, I always get lost. But here she is.
Hi, my name is Christine Zeller-Powell, and I'm an attorney with Catholic Community Services, where I direct the long name Refugee and Immigrant Services Program. So thank you for the invitation to be here today, and thank you to all the other speakers for sharing. I'm going to speak a little bit about how changes to the immigration system under the Trump administration have affected programs at Catholic Community Services and our clients here in Lane County. For a little context, at CCS, we have an immigration legal services program that served over 500 individuals in the last year. We also have social services and employment programs for refugees and asylum seekers, serving nearly 300 individuals in the last year. Until very recently, we provided refugee resettlement under the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, the official refugee program of the federal government. We resettled 55 individuals through that program last year, and we're on track to resettle 75 individuals this year, until that program was effectively canceled through an executive order. The last 6 months have been very difficult. This time has been characterized by rapid changes in immigration law, with the elimination of various legal immigration statuses, like temporary protected status for Venezuelans and Haitians, as well as premature and probably not lawful termination of immigration parole statuses. This has impacted many hundreds of individuals here in Lane County. With the loss of these statuses often comes the loss of work authorization. This is extremely difficult for people who have been working legally and supporting themselves and their families. The sudden and arbitrary loss of legal status is devastating. Oftentimes, these individuals are also eligible to apply for asylum, so we've been helping them do so, and that can eventually lead to work authorization. But in the meantime, jobs can be lost, rent payments missed. We have also seen the decimation of the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. The U.S. Refugee Admissions Program has been in place since 1980 and has welcomed over 3 million individuals. These individuals are screened overseas, come to the U.S. at the invitation of the federal government, receive up to 90 days of case management services when they arrive, and have a pathway to lawful permanent resident status, and then citizenship after 5 years. Our community has been very supportive and welcoming of these new neighbors. We are grieving the loss of this program and the now longer wait for family reunifications that were pending on January 20th. For example, we still have many Afghan families waiting to be reunited since the fall of Afghanistan in 2021. However, since we started this program, the refugee program, during the first Trump administration, we are not strangers to persevering through difficult times. And we also know there are thousands of asylum seekers in our community who are fleeing the same kinds of persecutions as refugees, and that this population can thrive here, especially if they can access immigration legal services. Oregon has a history of being a welcoming state for immigrants and refugees. From welcoming refugees from Southeast Asia in the 1970s to becoming the first sanctuary state in 1987. And now we are one of the few states in the nation to have a universal representation program called Equity Corps of Oregon, which Katrina mentioned, but I'm going to say it again because it is so important. So this program provides free, high-quality immigration legal services to help low-income Oregonians navigate the immigration system. It's a really big deal and something we should be so proud of, and yes, support when it comes up for renewal. Protecting people from deportation is not a one-and-done sort of thing. It takes many years and a lot of paperwork due to the complexity and backlogs in the American immigration system. From helping people apply for asylum or work permits, helping unaccompanied minors submit various applications for status, to advising people before an ICE check-in, to filing habeas corpus petitions to fight illegal arrests of Oregonians by ICE, ECHO funds an incredible team of immigration attorneys around the state that are working together to protect and defend Oregonians who are immigrants and refugees. Fortunately, as mentioned, the legislature just renewed this funding for the program, but now we are also seeing that the needs for legal representation are even greater because of the way immigration laws are currently being enforced. And in spite of all the changes and horrific images and videos we see in the news, our work continues. Our legal services team continues to help people apply for asylum, work permits, green cards, which is the sort of common name for a lawful permanent resident, family reunification, and citizenship. Many of the normal immigration processes are still in place, albeit with longer processing times and increased scrutiny and risk. Our social services team continues to help refugees and immigrants in our community navigate challenges around housing, employment, and healthcare. A couple of months ago, we received a new grant to provide extra support to refugee children to make sure they are succeeding in school academically, as well as integrating into our community. We have an adaptable, creative, and dedicated team serving refugees and immigrants at CCS, and an incredibly supportive community and team of attorneys and others around the state. We are committed to continuing this work and serving our community and being ready for when programs restart and when new pathways open up and families can be reunited. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll begin our Q&A quite soon, but first a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station, KLCC, for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. In Eugene, they broadcast on 89.7 FM. For those listening at home or in the car right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We're truly honored to have you. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived at klcc.org, as well as on our YouTube channel and the City Club of Eugene podcast. We'll have a short break before returning for your questions. Thank you.
presenters are ready to answer questions. Would like everybody to sit down, and if you have a question, come stand up here in line, and we'll get started. Okay, so go ahead, first question.
Amazing. Hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity, City Club of Eugene, and thank you, panelists, for being here and giving your perspectives. My name is Calvin Askew. I am a third-year law student at the University of Oregon Law. I hope to do immigration work myself, and me and my friend Serena here are both part of a club we founded called the Immigration Law Student Association. So my question for all of you, we can begin with Tobin and move along, but my question is, I think right now in especially in this era with immigration topics being so heated and being in such a complex time, especially with the internet, social media, news, how it is, there is so much misinformation and so much false news, misinformation, all these things that get thrown around in these heated topics. So I'm curious from each of your perspectives, what is a misnomer or something that you're seeing currently that's being talked about that is either untrue or is part of the problem in the conversation around who immigrants are, what's going on, and anything of that like?
Thank you so much for the question, Calvin. This is Tobin responding first. I think there's so much misinformation. I have conversations with students who identify as being from Oregon or from places in the United States, and they say things about the character of immigrants, of people who are non-citizens. They say, I know it can't be true that they are this, that, or the other negative stereotype about immigrants. So, just the basic shared humanity, which is part of what I said, just the recognition of a shared humanity across national difference and other types of social difference, I think is really important. And I think this isn't exactly the question that you asked, but I think one of the important things to keep in mind for restoring trust and having a circulation of reliable information is listening to folks. I say that in my position where I have the opportunity to sit with people in a seminar space and listen or have dialogue or talk, but listening first, hearing what it is that people have to say, where there are opportunities to build trust and then have conversations that are meaningful about perspectives. And if you want to change someone's mind about something that you believe to be misinformation, I can't think of another way to do it other than having some credibility yourself and some shared stakes with the person that you're communicating with. Yeah, thanks for the question.
I'm Katrina Kilgren. This isn't a new kind of part of the current dialogue about immigration, but the idea that folks should do things the right way, that there are laws and there are viable means to come to the United States through legal channels, and that people should do those even though they might mean getting in line. But people should get in line to come to the United States lawfully, and if they don't deserve protections in the United States if they have not done that. There was a Gallup poll in 2018 that, however those amazing people crunch numbers, they assessed and determined that 158 million people in our global community had a desire to immigrate to the United States, to come and live here lawfully, to become Americans. 158 million. Of those, and now we move from 2018, and the new set of statistics is from 2021. But 2021, crunching the data from the government sources, like 32 million were able to access an application process and initiate it. So they found something and they were able to say, yes, I might qualify for this under the US immigration laws that are so restrictive. So like a fifth of people who had the desire were able to access, through different language barriers, access barriers, but also through eligibility criteria to actually initiate an application to attempt lawfully to immigrate into the United States. So that same year, 2021, how many people lawfully immigrated through our immigration laws? Less than 1 million, 900,000. And very much like Tobin, I think that mobility of people is part of global health and well-being. You know, as a US citizen myself, I've always had this encouragement that I could go wherever I wanted. I could live wherever I wanted. The world, you know, is my oyster, as they say. But that is not a reciprocal privilege that the rest of the world has. Our laws used to restrict people very blatantly based on racial categories, but they are still extremely limited, especially limited against nations that have a lesser economic power than ours. So for the vast majority of people wanting to immigrate, to become Americans, they are excluded entirely from the process. It is not possible under our immigration laws. And so, you know, take people who have so much skills and so much desire, so much motivation, idealism to live the American dream, and then add that to the world refugee crisis of other people that actually, you know, they are compelled to seek safety elsewhere, and the country that is at their closest access, that has a government that may be able to protect them, is ours. There is no legal means apart from our asylum system, which provides for a mechanism of seeking safety. So this idea of getting in line, it's a myth. It's a myth. There is no line for the majority of people who are interested in immigrating to the United States.
Yeah, this is Benjamin Wang. Just to add to what Katrina just said, you know, there's always that myth somehow if one person gets a baby here in the United States, then they get that chain going. 1, then becomes 2, becomes 3, 4, becomes 8. But if you really look at the immigration system in the United States, there are quotas. A lot of people have to wait for 20-some years in order to bring a brother here, for example. Or there are also limitations on who can bring their family members to the United States. So it's not as a lot of people believe that, you know, if you get a citizen child here, then the whole family, the whole clan, the whole village, the whole city would come to the United States, settle in the United States. And I think during the Trump first year, actually this is on the White House website, you would see that chain, that one person becomes 2, 4, 8, 16, and that type of chain reaction. It just, you know, the picture, when you look at the picture, it certainly looks scary, because that's why the invasion part, you can see the gang invaded our country, the foreigners coming to invade our country, and then suddenly it becomes a national security issue. We're threatened by immigrants who are here. So I think that's certainly something that if you get more understanding of the immigration laws, the limitations put on who can come, what type of relationship would allow people to come to the United States, then certainly it's not that type of chain reaction.
This is Christine. I think something I've been thinking about the last year or so as rhetoric has gotten continually more fraught. When I hear the phrase criminal immigrants, illegal immigrants, I think to myself, well, what does that person mean when they say that? And I want to give you an example. A couple scenarios. So you might have heard of the CBP One app. So people could come who wanted to seek asylum in the United States, could come in Mexico, download this app on their phone, and then try for often months at a time to get an appointment. If they got an appointment, they could come to a port of entry on the southern border. They could present themselves. They could disclose all their documents. They could explain why they were seeking asylum. They could be processed, and then they would be, during the last couple of years under the Biden administration, they would be allowed to enter the United States with what's called immigration parole. It's like a temporary 2-year status. which would allow them to apply for work authorization. And then they would also be put into removal proceedings, deportation proceedings with the immigration court, so that they could file their immigration case, their asylum case. That process involves an arrest. So if you do an FBI background check on those folks, they will show up as having an arrest at the border at the time of entry. So are they criminals? I think that some people who are using that term are saying, yes, that's why we're getting rid of them. But I think probably many people would think, okay, if I think of an illegal immigrant or something, that's somebody who's snuck into the United States undetected, they're not, they're trying to hide from the government, and then they've been involved in violent crime. And I think there are a lot of people who would agree that that's, those people are not good for our community, and it's okay to, try and find them and arrest them and potentially deport them, or actually maybe we do want to keep them in our prisons because we do want them locked up, and we think if we send them back to their home country, they're just going to come back. So that's something I think about a lot. Like, what do we really mean? There's a lot of nuance there.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question.
Good afternoon. Thank you for providing such an excellent panel on a very relevant topic. I just had a couple of quick process questions. Katrina, you spoke about the Equity Court of Oregon, or the ECO. Can you tell us here in the room, and more importantly maybe for the listeners, how one would get in contact with them should they need to avail themselves of that?
I would love to. Thank you. I'm excited about it because the more people who can get connected to ECHO. Oh, absolutely. So our question is, how does somebody, if somebody wants to get involved or seek help from the ECHO program, the Equity Corps of Oregon, how to do so? There is both a statewide hotline that people can call to initiate their enrollment into the program, or Catholic Community Services, Christine's office, they have what's called a navigator for somebody who would like a more personal face-to-face process to share personal information in the comfort of an office. They can share that information locally at the Eugene office of Catholic Community Services and get access to the statewide network of ECHO attorneys, funding, and social services.
Okay, and just one other quick question. Do you know if the city... Yes, one more quick question. Can you tell us, is the city of Eugene formally viewed as a sanctuary city? And if so, how does that assist you, or what effect does that have in the real world with respect to what's going on?
Well, Oregon is a sanctuary state. We have been for a long time, as Christine mentioned. Is Eugene a sanctuary city?
Yeah.
Our knowledgeable audience has provided the answer that yes, Eugene. Thank you. How does this affect my work? Well, when I'm assessing risk of certain activities with people who are concerned about their safety in the changing times, I can with confidence say that any local law enforcement, any local office, any state personnel, schools, those people are prohibited by law from assisting ICE in any way. They cannot share the information. They cannot tip off ICE and let them know, oh, I have suspicions that this person may be. There is no communication in that direction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just
Next
want
questioner.
To add quickly to that, how that affects what we tell clients. So I think one of the things, as attorney, I often think, especially during this time, part of our job is to calm people down because they're concerned, they're worried, they're anxious. So being in Oregon, we can always tell them, at least you're not in Texas, where the police officers may arrest you and help ICE arrest you, but in Oregon, at least the state officials, at least by law, they're not supposed to help ICE enforcing immigration laws.
Thank you.
Is the ECHO hotline number secret?
Absolutely not. No, if you Google or otherwise use a search mechanism on the internet to put in ECO, ECHO, Equity Corps of Oregon, you will very quickly find the statewide hotline.
So if my Spanish-speaking
We need the questions on the mic, otherwise the radio can't hear them. So if you have a question, come to the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next questioner.
Hi, I'm Sue Barnhart, City Club member. Thank you so much. This has been so informative, and thank all the audience. There's so many people here today, so thank you all for coming. My question is, what else can we do? I know that there's organizations like the one that Christine is involved with and one that I'm involved with, Oregon Community Asylum Network, and we need more volunteers to help at this time. And I know that some people are going over to the ICE office on 7th and Pearl every day, and some people are getting trained to be legal observers, either through two different ways. And I'm wondering what you think, is that an important thing to do? Do we need to have lots of people step up and be there? Or does that put our friends and neighbors at risk if there's a lot of us outside watching?
Oh, good question, yeah.
Well, so a little bit of, this is Christine. So a little bit of background is that ICE does not share records if they detain somebody. So there's not any centralized database where we can know how many people are being detained in our community. The only way we have at least some of that information is due to different volunteers observing, being physically on the ground and watching who ICE is putting into vehicles and transporting. Oregon does not have any overnight detention facilities. ICE does not have any overnight detention facilities in Oregon, so everyone who's detained here is taken immediately to Tacoma. So I think on the one hand, that information has been extremely useful. I think that some of our community members, and that those folks have also helped people connect, community members who are going in for ICE check-ins, connect with ECHO, so connect with legal representation, or have sort of informed them that actually there's more risk in this than there was a few months ago, so if you have an attorney, you should let them know that you're going in, for example. So I think that is a very positive outcome. I think that sometimes if there are large groups of people around the building, or potentially what might be louder or more violent protests, then the community members who are going into the building for check-ins may feel unsafe. And so that is something we absolutely want to avoid, because if people miss their ICE check-ins, then they are in violation of the terms of their release, and they can be detained on that basis. So it's really important to protect that.
Anybody else want to respond? Okay. Thomas?
We have a question from our YouTube live stream from Lynn. She's simply asking, are asylum seekers checking in at the Eugene Federal Building or Portland now?
This is Christine. So back in, I think it was the end of May or the end of May, we had community members, clients coming into our office showing us this flyer that said, after June 1st, the Eugene ICE office will be closed. Your check-ins are going to be in Portland, at the Portland ICE office. And folks, there are 3 ICE offices in Oregon: Portland, Eugene, and Medford. The folks in Medford also got that notice saying they were going to have to drive to Portland for their ICE check-ins. Can be glad we don't live in Ashland. I mean, think about that. So then June 1st rolled around, and it seemed like actually people still did have check-ins at the Eugene ICE office. And then the Portland ICE office was closed due to protesters shutting down access. And so then it seemed like actually we had even more people checking in Eugene than we'd had before. People were being told to come to Eugene ICE office from Salem, Bend area, the coast, Medford. So sometimes they would have, people would be drive up here from Medford and then be detained in their cars here, and just it's a big mess. So the Eugene ICE office is not closed.
Here's a question. Let's see. Did the U.S. presidents prior to Trump enforce immigration laws and deport undocumented immigrants from the U.S.? Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah, it sounds like, this is Benjamin Wang, it sounds like only President Trump enforces immigration laws and deporting people, but that's really not true. Previous presidents have also enforced immigration laws, and in fact, the most people a president deported belong to President Obama, not President Trump. And 1 year in his administration, he deported 400,000 people. And that's why he was called at that time the deportation in chief. And President Biden, the most people he deported in 1 year was 270,000 people. But President Trump, during his first term, the most people he deported was 267,000. So it's not just other presidents didn't deport people. President Trump is the only president who is enforcing immigration laws and deporting people, especially undocumented people. But I think the difference is really, as I mentioned, that fear, it's being done in such a way that it's almost like feel like rounding up animals and take them somewhere in detention centers and deport them. I think it's really that kind of fear, that atmosphere, and that's really very evident during the Trump years.
Something that I'll quickly add to that is that the numbers that Benjamin just presented are for internal enforcement of the immigration laws, investigating and then detaining and potentially deporting them from the interior of the country. But if you also include the number of people who are being arrested and then quickly deported at the border, the numbers are in the millions, like Professor Hansen mentioned at the beginning of his. So when you look at those numbers as well, like the asylum system has been becoming increasingly just so difficult to access, and that has also been a long process. But I just wanted to kind of bring that into that it's kind of twofold. It's the fear and the numbers of actual people being deported from the inside of the country, people who may have been living here for 20, 30 years, but also then just it's a much higher volume of people who are being quickly deported out of sight without access to attorneys, without access to any legal process at their first point of contact with our government, usually at a port of entry or the southern border.
Okay, I know we've gone over time, but how about one more question? And I think they'll do some editing. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. Mayor Karin Knudsen, City Club member, and incredibly grateful for this conversation and the opportunity for our larger community to learn from your work and expertise. It is true, to a previous question, the City of Eugene is categorized as a sanctuary city since 2017. We've had our Protection of Individuals Ordinance in place. Our police department is a part of our City of Eugene, and that ordinance is related to all use of city resources. We do not pursue people or use any of those city resources to persecute people based on questions about their immigration status. That's our law in place in this community. But that's not my question for you all. My question for you all has to do with the fact that the people in this place are our most valuable resource. The neighbors, the friends, the family, the business owners, the workers, we together form this particularly special place. And I see all of the harms that the actions of this current administration are extracting and creating in our community with so much uncertainty, the absence of due process, a disregard for consequence at the local level. And we at the city, in this community, we care very much about the consequences at the local level and protecting people. So I'm just curious if you all could each very quickly share with us one observation of what you see we are all losing right now because of the way that this administration is enacting their priorities upon our community.
Fear and anxiety. This is Tobin. Thank you for the wonderful question. I'll just mention fear and anxiety as a psychosocial disruptor of basic human connection, humans to other people, people to place, the ability to carry out our everyday lives free of worry, of presence.
One of the things I see here is a lot of the immigrants, we think about immigrants, the They come here, they work hard, even though, they've been talking about being criminals and all that, but we know that's some people, but not all immigrants. Now, also, they make huge contributions to our economy. They work hard. They work, if you go to farms, construction sites, forestry, the forests around us, you'll see a lot of immigrants work there. Undocumented, documented, that's difference is really, documented may have status, and undocumented people may have come here without permission. But they're all here. A lot of them have been here for a long time, many, many years. They have children, they have spouses, they have businesses. So now we're enforcing the immigration laws, and we're spending a lot of money on this. And also, I remember the so-called beautiful bill, whatever it is, has $150 billion for enforcement of immigration laws, deporting people otherwise. So you can see we spend that much money, but also we're taking away the people who are actually working and making contributions to our economy. And I think that certainly, it's a loss for the immigrants because their families being broken up, the loved ones being sent out. But it's also a loss for our community, for our country, that loss, the economic loss. And I think that's in both ways, when spending so much money to deport them and also taking away the labor, the workforce that we really need to develop and expand our economy.
Okay. 2 more short impressions, or?
Gosh, I think that also it's a loss of idealism as a nation in the vision that we are a pinnacle and a leader of human rights across the globe. Now, I certainly grew up with that vision presented to me in my education and embraced it and felt very proud of it. And now, the face of the federal government for me are masked people attacking people on sidewalks, pulling out of car, a father out of the car at his daughter's preschool, are young men hunched over in a high security prison of El Salvador. That is the face to me now of my government.
I would echo all of those things and also just say I think what we see is that we are losing young people, young families who are here, who are driven to work. We have an aging population. Our enrollment numbers in schools are down. These would be excellent community members for us to try and keep, not drive away.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for your responses and your being here. I'm going to turn it over to Thomas now.
That's all the time we have for today. Please join me in thanking Tobin Hansen, Katrina Kilgren, Benjamin Wong, and Christine Zeller-Powell. This has been our July 18th, 2025 conversation at the City Club of Eugene. We'll be back here next week at Wow Hall on Friday, July 25th at noon. That program is called Finding Imperfect Allies, the Future of DEI. It's sure to be a great forum, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you all. Have a great weekend, and see you next time.